Hey guys, Jim here again. And this week, I will cover the final MMA fight prediction video of 2014, which is for the UFC 183's main event that features a middleweight super fight between one of the all-time greats and former long-time reigning UFC middleweight champion Anderson the Spider Silva when he meets the former Strikeforce welterweight champion in the Stockton bad boy Nick Diaz in what should be a very thrilling contest of strikers. I will give you guys a short fight profile as well as a full fight breakdown of the two fighters and who I'm ultimately winning, walking away victorious when this super fight comes to a close. Now, without further, let's get Silva Diaz, the super fight. The Anderson Silva Nick Diaz fight is a fight the fans have wanted to see, but it just never made sense to put together when both these guys were on win streaks and were at the top of their game because of where they were in their respective careers. Nick was fighting at welterweight. Anderson Silva was enjoying a successful, fruitful reign as champion of the UFC's middleweight division, breaking records, taking folks out, and looking pretty damn cool in the process. Nevertheless, with both these guys coming off back-to-back losses and really needing a win to stay relevant in the sport, it's the perfect time to do it. In Anderson Silva's case, he had his title reign and 17-fight win streak ended at the hands of the All-American Chris Weidman at UFC 162 via knockout for clowning too damn much. Although he was given a rematch at UFC 168 to reclaim his championship and prove to the world that miracles don't happen twice. However, that was not to be because Weidman had him well scouted every turn of the fight, whether it was him countering Silva a second before he was going to throw the knee in that Muay Thai clinch, or Chris checking Anderson's leg kicks, thus shattering his shin with a destruction, since Silva went to the well with that attack one too many times. As a result, he lost the rematch via TKO and injury. Besides that, losing the rematch to Chris was bad enough, suffering that near career-ending injury was even worse, because he was out all 2014. Fast forward to now, Anderson Silva is on the mend after a successful operation. He is now in training to face his opponent, the former Strikeforce welterweight champion Nick Diaz at UFC 183 next year. And speaking of Nick Diaz, who likewise is coming off 2 straight world welterweight title losses. First, at the hands of Carlos Condit when they compete against each other at UFC 143 for the interim UFC welterweight championship via unanimous decision in a very close fight by being outslicked and outlanded. And then post-fight, he failed the drug test and was out of action the rest of 2012. Then a year later, he was given an immediate title shot against Georges St-Pierre thereafter at UFC 158, where he dropped another unanimous decision to the longest reigning welterweight champion ever, Georges "Rush" St-Pierre, who dominated his predictable ass by taking him down round after round, smothering him, nullifying his submission game, and even on the feet where a good portion of the fight was conducted, Nick wasn't able to put any heat or any pressure on Georges St-Pierre to the point where he was going to finish it. Although he did get in some clean shots, especially to the body, along with stuff a few takedowns, it just wasn't enough to take away the championship away from Georges St-Pierre. Nevertheless, since he fought Georges St-Pierre, Nick Diaz hasn't been in the cage in about almost 2 years. Instead, he's been in his semi-retirement, keeping his name in the public eye by doing interviews, starting his own fight promotion, which ran one successful event, along with turning down the fights the UFC offered him against guys that pretty much were bad matchups for him, like Michael Bisping or Hector Lombard, who would have knocked his ass out, and Carlos Condit, who would have just beat him again by decision. Since Nick made it very clear that the only way that he fights again in the octagon is if they pay him the amount that he felt he was worth. Nevertheless, as fate would have it, Nick has signed an extension with the UFC, and now he's going to fight at UFC 183 in the main event. And not only does he get to make a lot of money for this fight against Anderson Silva, if he wins against Anderson Silva, he gets a title shot at Johny Hendricks. On the other hand, for Anderson Silva, should he defeat Nick Diaz, he shows the world that he is back and adds another victim to the highlight reel. With that said, let's break it down. When examining these two former champions on a little tail of the tape here, it's obvious Anderson Silva is taller than Nick Diaz. He's 6'2". Nick Diaz is 6 foot, so 2 inches difference there. The reach, Anderson Silva has a 77-inch reach. Nick Diaz has a 74-inch reach. So there's 3-inch difference there. Moving on to the cardio. Both these guys can go 5 rounds, no problem. Onward to the skills. With striking, Anderson takes the stand-up all day because he has precision striking, movement and transition, great footwork. He's got an excellent Muay Thai clinch. In addition to that, Anderson Silva has more ways to knock you out than Nick Diaz because he can either finish you with knees like he did Stephen Bonner and Rich Franklin, or that jab without motion that he nailed Forrest Griffin with, along with the front kick fatality he put on Vitor Belfort. In contrast, Nick Diaz is a kind of fighter who, yes, will throw kicks, elbows, and knees when it's convenient for him. But for the most part, Nick's main striking discipline is boxing. In his attack, it revolves around going to the body with body shots, and additionally, some full volume pitter-patter shots that don't really have a lot of power behind them, but these full volume punches are very good for setting you up for a big power shot once Nick is ready to go in there for the kill. And while Nick doesn't necessarily have one-punch knockout power, he makes up for that by hitting his opponents with an accumulation of strikes to put them away, just like he did with Robbie Lawler most famously, Frank Shamrock, Paul Daly, Mario Saromskis, just to name a few. In general, he's just a very predictable striker. Diaz does not change up his footwork, nor does he check leg kicks. Aside from that, his main objective is to chase you down and back you up. So his style is tailor-made for Anderson Silva. For that reason, I give the striking advantage to Anderson Silva. Now, for the most part, when it comes to the wrestling aspect of this fight, I don't think it's going to have a heavy effect on the fight whatsoever when you have two strikers in the cage. But should it go that route, I think it'll be Nick trying to initiate the takedown, but he's not going to be able to take down Anderson Silva the way he took down Frank Shamrock, Scott Smith, and Carlos Condit, because Anderson Silva has much better takedown defense than either one of those guys, as well as Nick Diaz. He was able to stuff a couple of Weidman's takedowns, as well as shutting down Chael's wrestling in the second round of their second fight. Therefore, Anderson will stuff his takedowns and make him pay for each and every attempt. Beyond that, for the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu aspect of this fight, that's where it gets rather interesting. Both guys are black belts in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. That being said, Nick has never been submitted in his entire mixed martial arts career. Anderson Silva has been submitted several times in his career. I'll give it to Nick. I mean, he's submitted the likes of Josh Neer via Kimura. He scored some armbar victories over Sakurai and Cyborg Santos, as well as that impressive Gogo Plata submission over Takanori Gomi. Now, despite the fact that Anderson wasn't all that great early in his career on the ground, his jiu-jitsu has improved exponentially since his time as a welterweight, as seen when he submitted Travis Lutter, a jiu-jitsu black belt who has far more credentials and experience than Nick Diaz, when he slapped on that triangle choke and he struck him from the bottom to force him to tap out in the second round. Moreover, he submitted a guy that is really tough to submit in Dan Henderson via rear naked choke, and when it really counted, the lights were on bright and he was losing the fight clearly on every judge's scorecards, Anderson Silva pulled out a major comeback with a miraculous triangle choke at the 11th hour on Chael Sonnen to submit him. Whereas Nick Diaz, when he was losing the fight to George St. Pierre, couldn't hit shit. Nonetheless, if a grappler the caliber of Chris Weidman, who is much better on the ground than Nick Diaz, can't submit Anderson Silva, but I sincerely doubt that Nick Diaz will be able to pull it off. So if the fight hits the ground, Nick is not going to be able to submit Anderson Silva. He's going to throw some attempts out there. Anderson Silva will counter. And if Anderson's able to get on top of Nick, wear him out, he will submit Nick Diaz. That's for sure. The fight as a whole, I have the odds is 80% for Anderson Silva for victory and about 20% for Nick Diaz. Now I'm just being generous, because I don't really see how Nick Diaz is going to beat Anderson Silva unless some miracle he's able to generate enough power and catch Anderson Silva making a mistake and use momentum against him and finish him with a counter. But other than that, I doubt the fight hits the ground, and even if it did, he's not going to submit him. Anderson will get out of it or reverse him and submit him in the process. Secondly, on the feet, he's going to check out his timing, get his pattern down packed, evade his shots, frustrate him, get that Muay Thai clinch, ragdoll him and knee him to the body and take out that great cardio of his. And from there, Anderson changes up the rhythm, and instead of just doing knees to the body, knees to the jaw. In addition to that, he's gonna throw in a roundhouse kick for good measure, and once he falls down, Anderson Silva will pummel him until the ref stops the fight via KO, because Anderson Silva has better skills. He hits harder than all of Nick Diaz's opponents. Besides that, when Nick makes a mistake or goes out there taunting, Anderson Silva will catch him and he will knock him. My official prediction, Anderson Silva will reign supreme over Nick Diaz and knock his ass out in round 1 or round 2, round 3, if he wants to toy with him. Nonetheless, Nick will be on the ground, unconscious, wondering where the hell he's at, while Anderson will stand tall and show the world that the Spider has returned to top 4. When Nick Diaz, going back to the drawing board, Anderson Silva with this victory will be moving on from this glorified tune-up match, dubbed a super fight, to bigger and better opportunities. Maybe a few interesting matchups in middleweight, like finally fighting his former training partner in Lyoto Machida. Then again, a novelty fight against Kong Lee would be sweet too. Or reinvent himself in light heavyweight, take out some top contenders, and fight John Jones for the title in a real super fight. But regardless, whatever he does, we're going to be entertained thoroughly watching it. Okay guys, this is the end of MMA fight predictions for 2014, and I will be back next year in 2015 for the next set of MMA fight prediction videos. On a personal note, I'd like to thank all my fans and even my haters for tuning in and supporting my channel, and I hope you all will do so in the future. And stay tuned for what I have coming up next on my channel, which will be some entertainment-based content that will include TV, movie, anime, and don't worry, they're going to be just a smash mouth and in your face as always. Have a great day, guys. I will see you guys for the next video. Jim, signing off.